Today, I'm going to explain an adventure movie called Upon the Magic Roads. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in a Russian town as a mythical creature runs freely over a wheat field. The animal is so fast that it leaves a trail of bright golden light in its wake. After it gathers enough speed, it jumps and vanishes right into the clouds. My dreams when I take melatonin. Early the next morning, the farmer who owns the wheat field rings a distress bell to call his 3 sons. The youngest one, named Ivan, wakes up his 2 brothers before bolting towards the bell tower. They soon arrive at the place, only to discover it in ruins. The wheat field, which is their only source of income, is now partially destroyed. Father scolds his sons for not being vigilant enough and orders them to patrol the fields after sunset. But the 2 older brothers use their seniority and force Ivan to do the task alone. That night, Ivan sits alone on the edge of the wheat field, talking to his pet hedgehog. Everything seems to be normal until he notices the silhouette of a huge mare approaching the field. The animal also sees him and begins to gallop away. But Ivan quickly throws a rope in its general direction and manages to land it around its neck. However, the mare is simply too powerful for Ivan and yanks him through the fields and meadows. It begins to glow like a silver star as it drags him effortlessly. The mare even jumps high enough to fling him through the clouds, giving him a mesmerizing view of the whole village. This is the same mythical creature that was running amok in the wheat field last night. But when the mare comes down, it lands right into a bog while Ivan crashes on solid ground. He sees the poor animal gradually drowning and tries to help it, completely forgetting what his real mission was. Ivan ties up the rope to a nearby wheat mill and slowly pulls the animal out of the bog. The mare, now extremely tired and afraid, sheds a single tear. This moves Ivan and he releases the animal, but only after making it promise that it will no longer trample on their fields. The mare neigh is in agreement and departs, leaving Ivan with the decimated wheat field. The morning after the incident, Ivan wakes up in the stable where he is. Amazed to find 2 royal-looking black horses, he takes in the sight of these majestic creatures when suddenly he hears a voice in the background. He grabs a nearby pitchfork and prepares to defend himself. But when he approaches the source of the noise, Ivan is surprised to find a small, humpbacked, magical foal. The animal can even speak just like a human. Foal informs Ivan that the mare he encountered last night is his mother, and she has gifted these 2 horses to him. Foal will also stay with Ivan so that the human can teach him how to become a kind soul. Not long after, the old farmer angrily screams upon seeing the state of his field. But Foal reacts quickly by carrying Ivan on his back and racing away from the field with great speed. Along the way, Ivan expresses his desire to sell the horses to acquire some much-needed money. Foal agrees to help and lets out a piercing whistle, summoning the horses to their current location. The group then sets off on a journey to the nearby bustling market town, hoping to find a suitable buyer. Upon arriving there, several eager buyers immediately bombard Ivan with offers for the regal horses, but he chooses to retain the animals and sell them only to the richest person in the area. That person happens to be the king, aka the Tsar. As Ivan walks to the grand palace, the Tsar spots the horses and becomes mesmerized. He immediately orders his men to capture them, saying a poor farmer like Ivan could never have bought these horses by himself. Feeling dejected, Ivan once again turns to Foal for help, and the latter lets out a whistle, summoning the horses back again. As the 2 gallop towards their rightful owner, they knock the Tsar over into a nearby bag of flour. "Eat this, you piece of shit!" This enrages the king greatly, but he keeps his composure in front of the gathered public. Following this, Ivan proposes a trade, requesting 2 silver hats in exchange for the horses, but one of the courtiers asserts that the horses are bound to keep running back to their master. Taking this into account, the Tsar offers the farmer boy the job of a handyman in the palace. Ivan, who is extremely naive, accepts the offer without thinking twice. The gathered crowd. He also starts cheering for the common boy, dubbing him as the animal whisperer. Word has it he knows how to make antelopes give BJs. Weeks pass by and Ivan gains more and more popularity among the general people. This makes the Tsar jealous, and he seeks to find a way to execute Ivan. One day, his courtier gives him an idea. Send Ivan on the mission to capture the legendary Firebird. It is an impossible task which will effectively guarantee Ivan's failure and give them a reason to execute him. The Tsar absolutely loves the idea. Yeah, and approves of it right away. Later, when Ivan learns about the mission, he becomes determined to complete it. Foal warns him that the Firebird has never been tamed by anyone, but Ivan doesn't budge from his decision, so the 2 eventually set out on their journey. Along the way, they venture into the forest to collect some sedatives called dream nuts. To lure the Firebird, they walk all day and finally reach an oasis in the desert, which is the home of the beast. There, they see a warning about the presence of liquid sand, but Ivan ignores it and throws the dream nuts before riding nearby. After a while, the majestic bird emerges from the ground and begins munching on the nuts. Those sedative nuts begin to intoxicate the bird, but before falling asleep, it notices the two poachers and starts to attack them. Ivan and Fall are almost killed, but they somehow manage to rescue one another. The entire landscape is also demolished because of the ensuing chase, but in the end, the nuts finally knock out the bird, allowing Ivan to capture it with chains. The next day, it appears very weak and is shedding a fiery tear. Fall then explains that the bird can only be hot when it is free. If it remains on the ground for a long time, it loses all its energy. Upon hearing this, Ivan feels pity for the poor bird and decides to let it go. As soon as he takes the chains off, the beast regains its fire and flies away in the skies, but not before leaving a fire feather for Ivan. Now that the mission has failed, Foal suggests that they should not return to the kingdom, but Ivan refuses to do so, as he's sure the feather will prove that they caught the Firebird. Upon their return, the star refuses to hear any explanations and orders their execution. But right then, the majestic Firebird appears, casting a bright light over the kingdom. It turns out the creature heard Ivan's pleas for help and has now arrived to return the favor. The people are baffled when they notice the Firebird following Ivan's orders. Hence, the king reluctantly allows him to live and also throws a feast in his honor. That night, Ivan is celebrated as a hero in the kingdom. As the Tsar's frustration grows, he is instigated by his courtier to send Ivan on another impossible task, to retrieve the princess, who resides in an ice kingdom on the top of a high rock. The very next day, a messenger announces the king's new assignment to Ivan, who accepts the challenge without any hesitation. Thus begins the second mission, and after scaling a series of treacherous mountains, Ivan and Foal finally arrive at the entrance of the palace where the princess resides. But they discover that the palace is blocked by a massive wall of ice, making it impossible to enter. At this critical moment, the farmer boy comes up with an idea. He takes out the fire feather, which allows him to melt down the ice barrier, but it also causes a ton of water to gush out. This unfortunately freezes Foal in a ball of ice, sending him tumbling down the cliff. The landing is a bad one, but the magical beast manages to survive without any injuries. Meanwhile, Ivan enters the palace, where he comes across the princess. He introduces himself to be a matchmaker, sent by the Tsar, but the princess tells him that she has no interest in marrying, as there are no heroes left in this world. Comes up with a test and abruptly jumps off the cliff. Ivan is shocked by the turn of events, but he immediately follows suit to rescue her. Impressed by his courage, the princess deploys her gown as a parachute and starts descending slowly. The idiot Ivan accidentally punctures the gown, causing both of them to tumble at great speed. It appears as if they are going to die, but Foal shows up with a pair of new wings and rescues both of them. Later that night, the three camp in the middle of the forest before continuing their journey back to the kingdom. The Foal, who that the Tsar wants Ivan dead one way or another, tries to help his friend. He advises him to abandon the princess and flee to save himself, but Ivan refuses. The next morning, the trio arrives at the kingdom, where Ivan is greeted with a hero's welcome. Everyone is surprised to see that he has returned from his mission alive, and the Tsar is compelled to reward him once more. Later that night, Ivan confides in Foal that he is actually starting to fall in love with the princess and wants to visit her. He thus takes some flowers and climbs up to her window, but there, unionists cut short when some courtiers arrive with clothes for her to wear. After a while, the princess finally meets the Tsar and gets disappointed to learn that he's the age of her father. The Tsar wants to marry her the very next day, but she is reluctant. The princess then comes up with a plan to delay the ceremony. She mentions that it is her family heritage to get married with a special ring, but sadly, her special ring was lost somewhere in the ocean. This turns out to be the perfect excuse for the Tsar to send Ivan on yet another impossible task. The same night, the magical Foal sees the spirit of a whale soaring through the sky. Foal speaks with the sun, moon, and wind, and learns that the princess's ring is inside the belly of a giant whale, which is now turned into an island. In the early hours of the day, Foal puts Ivan on its back and flies straight to the middle of an ocean. Ivan accidentally falls into the water, only to discover the giant whale, who is bound by chains. Foal then manages to communicate with the whale and learns that she was put in this state by some sailors as punishment. Turns out this was her punishment for devouring several ships for fun. She was young and naive then, but now she regrets her actions. The whale then sheds a tear, which gives Ivan a brilliant idea. Make her sneeze and break free from the chains. Come here and let me tickle that blowhole, you big old whale. So the duo rides into the whale's nostrils and tickles her interior with the tip of Fool's feathers. The plan works, and the giant beast starts struggling to itch herself. In the process, she breaks free of all her chains and also releases the trapped ships after decades. The whale then rewards Ivan in full the precious ring as a gesture of gratitude. In the next scene, the two make their way to the princess's window to deliver the ring. But their presence does not go unnoticed as guards and courtiers spot them through a scope and rush to capture them. The commotion wakes the Tsar, who grabs his gun and rushes to his window. He then cruelly shoots Full without any hesitation. On the other hand, the guards storm into the bedchamber and arrest Ivan, falsely accusing him of trying to kidnap the princess with all the roadblocks. Out of the way, the Tsar is ready to marry the princess, but she demands that he rejuvenate himself through a recipe passed down from her grandmother. She requires him to bathe in 3 cauldrons, one filled with boiling water, the second with ice water, and the third with boiling milk. Sensing that it may be a trap, a courtier advises the Tsar to first test the cauldrons on Ivan. That night, the princess secretly confides in Full that she knows how to pass through her rejuvenation test. She reveals that throwing her grandmother's ring in the first cauldron, a feather from the Firebird in the second, and the flower of life and death that grows at the end of the world in the third cauldron will cancel out the deadly effects of each. Full, who was injured by the gunshot earlier, knows that it is a treacherous mission that may result in his demise, but for the sake of his best friend, he sets out to find the mythical flower. He then uses his lightning speed to travel to the end of the world. Full eventually finds the flower, but it warns him that whoever plucks it will be awaiting death Despite the ominous warning, Full plucks the flower to save Ivan. The following day, the Tsar declares that he is giving Ivan a chance at redemption and orders him to jump into the cauldrons. The latter believes that he is about to die, so he bravely professes his love for the princess. He then jumps into the boiling water. But right then, the princess throws her ring into the first cauldron, helping Ivan to emerge unharmed. In the second cauldron, the Firebird drops a feather, keeping him safe once again. Meanwhile, Full manages to deliver the flower just in time for Ivan to be saved in the third and final cauldron. After successfully completing his tasks, Ivan appears before the princess, who is amazed at his transformation. The Tsar is also shocked and believing that the recipe actually makes people younger. He jumps into the first cauldron, but as soon as he does so, a huge bubble emerges and carries him away inside of it. The people of the kingdom only laugh at his misfortune and instead start chanting for Ivan. The Tsar was a twat. Meanwhile, the princess and Ivan notice that Full is missing, so they start searching for him. They soon find him sitting patiently, waiting for his death as he had plucked the mythical flower. Fortunately, the princess reveals that the flower's warning was simply a test to assess the bravery of the person who picked it. She also clears that if Full had not plucked it, he would have actually died right there. Hearing this, Full delightfully gets up and hugs his best friend. The movie ends as Ivan and the princess finally get married and take over the kingdom as the new crowned king and queen. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.